Boom. There we go.
Unmute
All
myself.
right. So we're going to talk some vision stuff. We've got Sean von Stad coming in here soon. He is the engineer of who created the Vision Club, and it was quite a process of development, really. I personally am only involved in Flowtoys on sort of a trying to think of the best way, because there's not really a great way to describe how my involvement in Flowtoys. I did create the modes, but I am no programmer, and I've worked for Flowtoys, but only ever intermittently, mostly doing projects at the Flow Space, helping build the Flow Space, and then doing some projects with the modes, of course. And so, yeah, Sean and Prisna have been friends of mine for many years now, and it's been a pleasure to get to work with them and to get to know them and help them with their projects. Of course, I am very passionate about juggling in general, and when I saw the Vision Clubs appear for the first time, I was blown away and knew that I wanted to be part of it any way that I could. And so I started offering my assistance in various ways, and just became interested in the creation of the modes. And before I knew it, I was the guy. And Sean's going to talk a little bit more about that. Anyway, he is in the chat, Morgan. So maybe you can spotlight him. Can we both be spotlighted or something?
We can mute everyone and have you on, but we can spotlight him. He just got co-hosting abilities.
Great.
So he can do it as well. I'll go ahead and throw the spotlight.
You can do that too if you want, Jeremiah. And just make sure which camera you
There
want.
he is.
What's up, everybody?
Muted. No. Is he muted?
I'm muted on my end.
I just don't. We don't have any audio. I'm going to put some headphones in. Cool.
Any audio on me?
Yeah.
Here, if it's easy, maybe look into the other camera.
If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't have any volume. So
All
I'm
right.
putting my headphones in so I can hear you, Sean, and we can actually have a conversation.
Nice.
And good timing. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean von Stad.
Hey. Yeah, Jer, I had developed the initial round of modes and for the capsules and the pods, and obviously the pods and the clubs. And Jer kept asking me for more and saying, oh, can it do this? What about this? Can you change it like this? Can I see how it works? Can I get it, in on that? And he started tweaking the modes. I showed him how they worked, and he took to the software that we use really well and just started taking them to the next level, spending late nights with it, and completely basically rewrote everything, especially in the Vision Clubs, to be super dialed for clubs. Actually, the kind of, I wanted to tell kind of the birthing story of the Vision Clubs, because it's really kind of amazing, miraculous how they came together. So many things came together at the right time through the right people to enable them to happen that could have never happened before that. And I think it's amazing that happened at all. Everything from the addressable LEDs that we use, those are pretty recent technology. The programmer Brian Pinkham, who developed the control technology for those, the pattern engine that we use for the modes is basically a culmination of his life's work, and really kind of got to a point where somebody like myself or Jer could actually interface with it in an effective way around the time those clubs are coming together. The 3D printer technology that enables us to make them so light and handle so well also didn't really exist just a few years before that. And with Justin Widmar from Propbox Approved moving in-house to Flowtoys to run his business there, having direct access to that for development was instrumental. And Henry's just at that point, I contacted them about club bodies for a light club. And they said, well, you might be interested in this new solid handle grip, the loop grip that we're about to release. We haven't actually released it yet, but it's, it's very much like the Delphin solid grip, and we can make them in translucent material for you and send you some samples. And so I had samples of those and was building the clubs around those before those were even a thing. And if I had to make the club with a wrap grip, it would have just, it would have been more challenging, more expensive, and not felt as good. They wouldn't be as light. They would need all the extra hardware to handle the wrap and the attachment of the wrap and everything. So that came together. I'm probably missing some things, but even just a few years before that, we had done a big project with Disney that gave us access to a budget for engineers and experience working with engineers and wireless technology that got us to a point where we were able to pull off the kind of control that we have in there. And so all that stuff just happening at the same time. And yeah, I feel really lucky to have been a part of that, been able to pull it all together and have access to all that. I think we're all really lucky. And yeah, I feel like the Vision Club's kind of like happened. Jer, you're muted. Still don't hear Jer. But what else was I going to talk about? Kind of like two main points to talk about with that. So assuming everyone can still hear me. Yep. So a lot of people ask when they see the Vision Clubs and what they can do, and especially with the wireless Connect technology that we use for the capsules and vision props to wirelessly control them. Okay, what about Bluetooth? What about an app on my phone? What about creating a show on a timeline on my computer? You know, I want to do all that kind of thing. Can they do that? What can they do? What are the limits of what they can do? What about pictures? Do they display logos? I've got a gig coming up and they want to see their logo, that kind of thing. You know, how do they compare to Pixelpoi and all of that? Some of you might have heard of the Creators Core, Creators Clubs that we're working on. So the way we're developing this ecosystem, the vision props are kind of a way of controlling light patterns using parameters or parametric control and algorithms. And they enable us to have these beautiful detailed patterns that can also change over time and respond to parameters. So you can enter adjust and have the color palette change over time, or the density and things like that. Using something like a pixel prop control where you have a bitmap image essentially. If you wanted to do the same kind of thing, your prop would have to be able to do image processing in real time to say take a picture of a logo and apply some kind of moving effect that changes over time, or have to even change the color palette over time, would be a very processor heavy, intense thing to do. So doing it the way that we've done it in the vision props gives us a huge amount of possibilities in very affordable and durable hardware, and a lot of flexibility there. The kind of other end of the spectrum is the Creators Core. And I call it the Creators Core because it can go into the clubs and also into our POI and stabs and any other tube-based prop. And that is based on an ESP32 platform, which is kind of a high-end, kind of like an Arduino. It's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and much bigger processor, and that can connect directly to a computer and display images and video. You can use, in fact, the latency is so low, you can use the computer to do your image processing, and even using the 9xs IMU motion sensor that we put on there, feeding that back to the computer, affecting the lights with that, and sending it back to the clubs or other props in real time with almost no latency. So it really opens up all of that kind of more high-tech stuff people want to do. Now, there's also a way to control the vision props and capsule connect props through a computer or an app. And in order to connect to it, you need a piece of hardware that can actually talk with the Flowtoys Connect radio protocol and talk to Bluetooth and or Wi-Fi. So just jumping back onto the protocol we developed for the Connect props for capsules and clubs is very different from Bluetooth. It uses the same wavelength, 2.4 gigahertz, but a much cheaper and more robust radio. Not physically more robust than Bluetooth, but more robust in terms of it's very forgiving. It's low bandwidth. We're just sending a handful of parameters. We're sending them with a lot of repetition, a lot of redundancy, and also there's no response required from the other props. So you can control 1,000 props at once, and it's no different from controlling one. So there's no limit to how many you control. We also developed it so that any prop can control all the other props in the group. And that happens instantly. This is stuff you can't do with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, with a good router, maybe you get 100 props on a really good router. Usually you need a few routers, and it starts to get complicated, and you have to have that high power router running plugged into a wall or battery or something to enable that kind of control. And there's a lot of other reasons why Wi-Fi gets more complicated. Bluetooth seems really simple when you connect a headset to your phone, except if you're like me, you probably often have trouble with your headset connecting to your phone and go, damn, all these Bluetooth gizmos are great, except when they don't work, which is actually pretty often, surprisingly. My Apple AirPods don't reliably connect to my iPhone, and that drives me nuts. And it kind of makes me feel a bit better sometimes, like, wow, okay, Apple still can't establish, maintain a reliable connection between devices, especially when you're turning them on and off and reconnecting. Imagine doing that to, let's say you have a Dragon Disc staff with 12 capsules in it. That already far exceeds the limits of Bluetooth. I think you can connect like 5 devices at once to a single phone, for example. And so you end up very quickly needing another piece of hardware to be your bridge to connect to all your different props. And so the Flowtoys Connect Bridge is that piece of hardware. And that kind of combines the ESP32 platform, which is very kind of open source, developer friendly, like Arduino. A lot of people are able to work with the ESP32. And that's what we put into the Creators Clubs by popular request. And that same platform then goes into the bridge and combines with a Flowtoys Connect radio to talk to your Connect props, which includes the vision props and capsules. And so that you can connect through your computer to computer software or a phone and control your vision props. They still can't yet display logos. It is actually possible. We have made firmware that does enable logo display on Vision Clubs, but it's not integrated into the user firmware. It's like a whole different firmware set. It's something that we haven't put much development into, because usually if you start wanting to do that, you want to really take it a step further, and maybe you want to just get the Creators Core instead. So I know that was a lot and kind of jumping around there, but basically you've got your vision and capsule system and the creator system. And then there's the bridge, which can control the vision system and the capsules via software or an app, and also enables you to control both together with a single piece of software. So you could do a show, let's say you've got a whole bunch of vision props in your troupe, and you also have a new set of 3 Creators Clubs. You can use your 3 Creators Clubs to do the really processor image heavy content of your show, and use the 30 vision props and capsule props that you collectively have in your group to as all of your kind of filler in a show environment, something like that. Yeah, that was a lot of me talking. I kind of feel like taking questions or comments from somebody to kind of spur the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we've got some questions rolling in already through the chat.
Oh, the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I can pose the questions to you too, Sean, just to keep things simple.
Okay. Disney. Yeah. Sorry. I can't throw Disney out there without explaining it. So the Disney Paint the Night Parade was a huge LED kind of reworking of the old Disney Main Street Parade, where they have a lot of parade units and lights that go down Main Street in Disneyland every night in Anaheim and in Hong Kong. And the Paint the Night Parade was re-envisioning of that. They incorporated a bunch of Burning Man artists and stuff and brought Flowtoys in to make LED props for a bunch of the performers. So we developed a new system of DMX controlled wireless kind of super pod poi and staves and wands and stick poi that were controlled, and yeah, paintbrushes, the kind of levitation wands in the shape of a paintbrush. And so those were going down while the parade was running in Anaheim for maybe 2 years, a year and a half or something, every night. And my favorite thing about that was that the Disney audience was being exposed to poi spinning every night. They had 6 poi dancers in one parade. They had 3, I think, of the stick poi dancers in another float on the parade. And there were 2 staff spinners on stilts and the wand people. and these were also in Hong Kong. So Disneyland Hong Kong is still running the show, and they've been running it for years now. Every single night, kids and adults are seeing people spinning poi to music, and their lights. They have lights. They look like pod poi, but they've got brighter LEDs and the DMX control. And yeah, that was awesome. Crazy project, almost killed me, and we were totally late and over budget and all the rest. But it was a great opportunity, and especially to just get the flow arts out there in front of people in the context of music.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I remember seeing some of those props being worked on in the lab, and I remember early on thinking that was how the direction that the vision clubs were going or something. You're like, no. We've learned more than we need to from this system to make the vision clubs. Like we're going a different direction there.
Yeah.
We have a few questions that came up about Disney. Marvin, aka Grandma, is wondering who the performers were at Disney that spun those. Do you have any idea? Or do you recommend anybody?
They were Disney parade performers. So they have like career parade performers, kids who went to dance school from an early age and who are all about being working at Disneyland. So they do a lot of their parades. They do a lot of different characters, and most of them, hardly any of them, had any experience spinning poi before this. So right. They actually brought in, they hired Fire Groove actually to go in and teach based on my recommendation. They're down near LA. So Lester and maybe Kamala went out there and did their initial teaching them how to spin poi, and with just a few moves, and they have really good choreographers for their shows. They were able to really apply just a few moves in really a bunch of different ways that made it really compelling in a show environment.
Yeah.
So
oftentimes
they did not find fire dancers to hire for the parade.
Right. Oftentimes in shows or productions like that, you've got well-trained dancers who know how to use their bodies very well. And if you get an instructor in front of them, then they'll be able to learn at least what they need to know on a fundamental level for a performance like that.
It was incredible. At the consultation we did, they brought us down to just try this out, and they brought in 6 parade performers who had no experience spinning poi. And Prison and I taught them to spin in a half an hour, I think, workshop. And the choreographer then had them do a whole 3.5-minute show with choreographed poi spinning. And then we watched them do that, and they pulled it off. And then he gave them about 10 different pieces of significant feedback. He was like, they completely changed.
He was Madonna's choreographer. He was also fabulous.
Yes, he was. And these guys got like 10 complete different, and they just nailed it. It was like, okay, do the choreography completely different like this time. And just boom. It's like the difference between a professional dancer, who's been a professional dancer their whole life. And yeah, somebody who might bring more skills to the table, but in this context, it's more about that.
Awesome. That was Prisna too, for those who don't already know Sean and Prisna. Sean and Prisna are the Flowtoys team. Sean focuses a lot on the R&D and making sure things are working on the back end, and Prisna is up in the front doing.
Prisna's the one who makes it all happen. If it wasn't for her, this would have happened. She took me from my basement to this, basically.
There you go.
Flowtoys would still be just my friends in my garage at this point, if it wasn't for her.
And so we've got a lot of fun questions coming up. Folks, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. So people want to know, I'm going to try and get this a good sequence here. How do you make sure that the signal doesn't interfere with other vision clubs and props when there are multiple sets in the same area?
So the grouping is a random number that's selected, and I think there's something like 30,000 possible numbers for it to choose when you choose a group. And there's no issue. You could be broadcasting to all 30,000 of those at once, and in theory, there wouldn't be any issue with that. In practice, we've never found any issue. It is such a robust protocol. It's you could never send audio over it. It's very low bandwidth, and it has a lot of redundancy. And yeah, that's basically the short version. Is it randomly selects a channel or a group ID, and so anything you've chosen to be in that group will respond to a signal, while nothing else will. Also, for the most part, there's only one thing transmitting at a time. If you had 300 different groups all trying to transmit at the same time, there's still so much redundancy. That would be insignificant. I mean, it's sending the signal 200 times a second, and that's slow. It could send it way faster, but then, yeah, then there'd be a more likelihood of it not hearing its individual thing at the right time, whatever.
Right, and that wouldn't really happen anyway, because even when you do change the modes, they're not consistently communicating with each other. They're just sending one little message to be like, go here now, and then they're done talking until you make another command, right?
Actually, the one you press the button on keeps repeating. It keeps sending out, it's like, here's our current state. If you're in my group, you should be doing this. If you're in my group, you should be doing this. And it keeps doing that. So sometimes if a prop is having trouble with the signal, if it's completely blocked for some reason, you could take it out of a metal can 5 seconds later, and then it would jump and join the group.
There was one little test that Sean and I ran at one point as things were being developed, a distance test where we're used to Bluetooth, right? You walk across the house and your Bluetooth speaker stops working, or you start losing connection. And Sean started walking down the street outside of Flowtoys. He's like, stay there. And he just kept walking, like to the point where I couldn't see him, and we still had the clubs communicating.
Yeah, we had to get on the phone and be like, is it still responding? Yep, it's still going. Yeah. Did it change now? Yep, it changed.
Yeah. Did we ever get an official test on the distance that it works?
It's about 200 meters. I actually went out at night in a big field, so with no other interference, and about 100 capsules. And Ira and I walked out, we measured it out, and we would walk down a field with a special test firmware running to see when they stopped responding. And it was a pretty narrow range at about 200 meters where they would no longer respond instantly. There'd be a delay because they were losing packets.
Right. And Nick Pride sounds like he's got some experience with this sort of thing to some degree, because he's using phrases that I vaguely recognize. Is it an ad hoc protocol?
Honestly, I don't even know. I'm not the engineer. I know enough to know what's possible and not enough to know what's not possible, which is really useful working with engineers, because they usually come from the place of what's not possible. And I'm like, are you sure? What if we did this? And that tends to end up with solutions to things that I was previously told were impossible.
Now, funny enough, I said right before you jumped on the call that Sean is the engineer, and now you just said you're not the engineer. So clarify that for us.
I dropped out of engineering school after a year to travel the world and become an inventor and work with engineers. So I do know enough to be able to work with an engineer. And from working with engineers, I'm very curious, ask a lot of questions. So I have a pretty good understanding of things, but not really direct training. I'm not the one writing the code. I'm not the one writing the protocol, but I do have, I'm more of the mechanical engineer is actually kind of what I was going into studying. And even that is just a lifetime of experience of building and tearing things apart. And so the reason the club feels the way it does, is built the way it does, and the reason that Flowtoys are as durable as they are is directly me. I don't actually work with any other mechanical engineer. I do work with some on the 3D design of the parts. So I don't actually use 3D design software myself. I do sketches, hand sketches, and then give those to designers, and then usually give a lot of feedback with caliper. I use a caliper almost daily to measure them.
And for those who may not even know that word, what is a caliper, Sean?
It's like a little fork thing that measures tiny amounts. So you get like 0.001 millimeter measurements with an adjustable fork.
I've seen him do it many times. It's very precise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So continuing along in the questions here, you mentioned the bridge earlier that will be another way of controlling the vision props. Is there a release date for that?
No, but we do have a few of the kind of second version right now that we're playing with a few select people, and we're about to spin another version. And you can actually even make one yourself. We don't have the support documentation for that yet, but you could order off-the-shelf parts on Amazon and wire a few things together and make one. So once we I've developed the support documentation so that I'm not answering a million questions to one person at a time, then it's something that'll be very accessible.
And so how is the bridge different from just using the remote or the capsule to control?
It has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
Right, so it can interface to an app?
Yes, exactly. I was just looking at our kind of rough app the other day with Ben Cooperberg in France. He's kind of our open source developer extraordinaire who I've been developing the creator system with and working with Junglissimo on that. Anything that you've seen regarding that, including the show that Jared did with him with all the motion mapping stuff, that is all Ben and his software. He's developed open source software that'll enable you to make shows to a timeline and control and integrate all sorts of props and video and projection mapping and music and lighting and pretty much anything in and out. His Châtain software is like the ultimate artist open source tech integration software. And then Bento has been designed specifically for the creator's core system. And he also has another one that we haven't named yet that's specifically for vision and capsule props for using the bridge. And so enabling you to control all that on a timeline.
Right, and I do want to dig into the creators core a little bit more, but I want to get a few more quick questions out of the way here that I see about the Vision Clubs themselves or the design in general. Rob Duquette wants to know about the 3D printed parts and how you utilize 3D printing in the design of the Vision Clubs. And I know that was really useful for you, so take it away.
That's a secret.
That's a secret. But in general, like the 3D printing really opened up the door for you guys to do a lot of in-house testing compared to
yeah, and
years prior.
That's been the case for a while. But the kind of the new 3D printing technology I was referring to is really just the durable TPU-based materials that you see in a lot of FlowArts props now. There's a lot of companies making stuff like poi knobs and dragon spines and all kinds of things using elastomer, printable elastomer, which is very hard to print with. So it was really a matter of the 3D printable material was there, but there were very few people who were able to reliably print with it. And that was something Justin Widmar really pioneered on printing knobs for poi and, making them soft and squishy. And so being able to print something that's hollow or has strategic hollow sections out of a material that is stiff enough to make the connection between a polycarbonate tube and a Henry's body, but flexible enough to handle the impacts without cracking, and also transparent. So those three things were not achievable in any other 3D printer material until the TPUs became a thing. And NinjaFlex is kind of a popular brand name one that you might be familiar with. And we use that for the caps. So the club caps are 3D printed NinjaFlex. Those could be a molded part. The other parts in the club would be very difficult to mold because of some of the undercuts and things and the volume that we're doing. And also every time we get a new batch of tubing, the diameters change slightly because of the tolerances. And so we have to adapt the part to fit better to the new batch of tubing. And if we had injection molded everything, then we'd be stuck with a big pile of parts that don't fit. And so, yeah, it's really enabled us to innovate and also to just start, as soon as we were able to make 100, we could start selling them. And to injection mold something, you need to jump up to like 10,000 parts to make them affordable because of the cost of the molding setup. And so it really has enabled us to start small and let people be early adopters and, bring the thing to, provide before what would normally be possible.
Yeah, it's awesome. I remember when I first got introduced to 3D printing, it was really because of Flowtoys. And I'd heard a little bit about it. And I remember times when somebody would pop up with a new knob or a new cap, I should say. And they're like, we're trying out the next version of the cap. I must have seen 10 different versions of that at least that all fit just a little different or came off a little too easy. And being able to do that, change the design and do it 2 days later with a different one was, I realized just then how powerful of a tool 3D printing is not just for Flowtoys, but for designers in general. And
The ability to give it
yeah.
to, I mean, you can like try and predict everything that could possibly happen with something, and you can even make a few prototypes and test the heck out of them amongst all the, like let's say I had a set of 3 clubs. I could hand those to a bunch of people, different people with different styles, get all their feedback. It's not until you send the thing out to 100 people and let them live with them for a month that you start to get the really good feedback. And the ability to do that and then innovate based on that feedback is priceless.
Yeah. And so Eli McWalter is asking about the app, and just yes, we have addressed the question directly that there is an app in the works to control settings from the phone. What kind of functionality will that give us?
That's going to give you the version that we have now is basically you have kind of a grid of buttons that enables you to click on any of the modes on any page instantly. So you can click on that mode. And then we've actually opened up a few more parameters. So in addition to the adjust on the mode, you could also adjust the brightness individually for each mode. You could adjust the speed, the density, and the saturation, for example, and the hue, the color. And so you can adjust those individually for each mode, and the app retains that information per mode. So if you had changed fire to be pink fire, and then you had gone off to spirit for whatever, and then you go back to fire, it will still be pink, and whatever brightness you left it at, etc. Right now, that's only stored in the app, and we don't have a way of managing it per session. There's an app gets so complicated so quickly. We don't yet have a way of doing a timeline with the app, but we have the very powerful software, computer software that Ben's done. So it's really more of a live control, like a VJ app right now. I'm working on a hit record feature, as I like to call it. And that will enable you to basically start a song, hit record on the app, start VJing your prop, and hit stop, and have that kind of saved as your show, which you can then play back to the song. And the ability to save that on the prop so that you don't need the app or the bridge to be able to play that back is really the holy grail. We do have memory limitations on the Vision and capsule props though, and so we have to do some fancy things to enable it to record all that and on the prop and fit it in the memory. Yeah, that's kind of where the app is going right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And for folks out there who might be wondering a little bit more about the recording versus timeline thing, I have worked with both types of systems. As a user, I've been familiar with the visual poi for quite some time and performed using a timeline and everything and hopping on the computer and managing that whole system. But K8 actually has a rudimentary form of the record control on their K8 clubs, and I used that and was really, really happy with, or more like really intrigued by the potential for that style of show creation, because it removes the minute details that you have to deal with on the computer, moving things around and everything. And it's very much just like listen to the music, and when you feel it, hit the record, or when you feel it, hit the next mode. And is a great way to work. So I'm happy to see it moving in that direction.
And yes, we are working on balls.
Right.
Balls will be a thing. Right now, you can order, little known fact, you can order balls from Flowtoys that use the capsule light. They are 90 millimeter Umoja spheres from Lantern Smith with a capsule light in them. The capsule light has had the end cut off so that it fits better. You might have seen Kevin or Jer with those.
Yeah, we quickly became
shows. They're a little big for some things, but that is currently available. And yeah, working on a smaller light unit to make a better ball. I also have put a lot of thought, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of conversations into how to create kind of the ideal LED juggling ball, given all the limitations of the hardware, having to fit in the electronics, having to be able to press a button somehow, having to be able to charge it, having to be able to service it when it eventually breaks, because nothing's invincible. That's also affordable and comfortable to juggle. And how to to have it be small enough and have kind of a dead drop. And I'm pretty excited about the options that we've come up with. I think that we'll be able to make something that feels really great.
This is the only time balls have been allowed in the Club Fest so far, other than a few random videos.
Just don't juggle them.
Yeah, I won't juggle them. One of the things that's really exciting about even having these, they are big for most people for basic juggling, but it's a great way for us to be able to start experimenting with the kinetics of the props, and that was one of the most exciting parts about the whole Flowtoys system. When I started seeing what you were doing with the capsules and Capsule 2.0 and the Vision Club, the ability to have the prop respond to how we move and how we play really made the prop feel alive, or makes the props feel alive in a way that nothing else ever has. It responds to you.
And that is a result of a huge amount of work that Jeremiah put into dialing in the kinetic response on those modes. He was given access to the parameters that control the sensitivity and the decay and a bunch of other aspects of how they respond to kinetic movement in the software interface that we use to develop modes. And it enabled him in real time to be able to juggle it and just see, okay, let me make it a little bit more sensitive. Let me make it a little less sensitive. Let me put a little more of a delay on that. And that's one of the reasons that those responses are so tight is that.
It's my pleasure, man. Steve Muse just says thank you. He thought his Vision Clubs were going to be delivered Tuesday, and they were delivered right before Club Fest. And
Sweet.
Sends awesome vibes to Flowtoys. And so I think let's dig in, because one of the big questions here is a good prompt for diving further into the creator clubs and what's on the horizon. Nathan, again, asks, when will a fully programmable model be available that would allow someone to program the light combinations to music of a specific song, and how will they function in terms of the programming process? That is the creator system that you're talking about there, Nathan. And there are some big differences. The Vision system is much simpler to operate in person, where the other one will be far more invested in terms of time on the computer and learning the app there. But if you're that kind of mind, then it opens up a whole other door of possibilities. What else can you say about the creator club, Sean, and what kind of differences there will be with the Vision and who you're targeting with that kind of product instead of just having it all Vision Club?
Well, the Vision Clubs are definitely designed with ease of use in mind. They're designed for spontaneity. They're designed to be able to do everything that you might want to do on the fly, in the moment, without losing your flow, without having to go off to focus on your computer or pull out and unlock your phone and get into an app and make sure it's connected and go and mess around with things and then do the thing and then put it away and then pick up your props again. You just stop, press the button. Once you've learned the interface, there's a few different button presses, a few ways to use them. You can do almost anything you'd want to do on the fly without losing your flow. And that's been one of the biggest motivations behind it. And also the lighting effects being something that are very, they're inspiring yet passive. They're maybe reactive to your movement, but they're not something where you're like, oh, look, it's a smiley face. Oh, now it's a star. Now it's a flower. Now it's like, okay, I've seen this slideshow 1,000 times and I'm sick of it. And instead it's just ongoing visual, joy. It's just something that's beautiful and, responds in a way that doesn't get old and is always inspiring and is also simple enough that it's not distracting in a way. And the creator system, on the other hand, is really developed for people who want to control exactly what the lights are doing. And it requires a computer. It requires you to sit for hours at your computer to learn the software, to work with the software, to make the connections. You've got to set up your Wi-Fi router and make sure that everything connects properly. If it's going to be, more than a few props, you might need to upgrade your router, things like that. And we're working on ways to bake the show into the creators core. So once you've developed it, it can operate on its own, and you can just turn the clubs on and start the show and run it. They do have a lot of memory built in, a huge amount actually, more than you'd probably ever want. So you can bake in long shows, multiple shows. You could potentially hire somebody to develop a show for you and do what you need, or work with somebody who you do not need there to do your show. So you don't necessarily have to learn this to work with them. If you want to build a show that does very specific things, you don't necessarily have to learn or understand exactly how to do that. You could work with somebody else to do that. And I see, as this becomes more of a thing, that being a pretty sought after skill set. As somebody who knows how to make shows, that's something. I know people who do that for the Pyroterra Pixelpoi system, developing shows with that system even that go, do things over time is actually pretty complicated. And people who are good at it get hired to do that for other performers sometimes. I'm not saying that's like a career path you should look into, but it's a thing.
One question that I see popped up here is about data logging, and if it's possible to retrieve the accelerometer raw data for later processing and developing applications.
With the Creators Core, definitely. In fact, the Creators Core has a 9-axis IMU. It's an integrated motion processing unit with 3-axis accelerometer, 3-axis gyro, and 3-axis magnetometer. So it actually knows which direction it's facing, how fast it's rotating in which way, and how much force is being applied to it. And all that data can be streamed and processed in real time. Or it has a coprocessor, so it does a bunch of the processing internally. So the data it sends out is much lower, it's much simpler to work with than just like raw accelerometer data. So it's the kind of processor you have in phones and stuff, where it does a bunch of the processing first, sends out really clean data. It's easy for the software to work with and determine things about. Something that I've been very excited about eventually happening, and this has been based on requests ever since the first, electronic flow prop of any kind or juggling prop, is, can we detect what move we're doing and have the light change based on the move, or have it give me feedback on whether I did the move good and clean or not? And yes, there's a few people I've talked to have said that basically you would use machine learning. You would record a session of juggling the same pattern, say, and the machine learning could look at the data from that and go, what is the minimum amount of data I need to recognize this pattern? When I see these spikes with these timing intervals or whatever, that means you're doing a X pattern or move. And it could also give you feedback on how consistent it is. So to be able to recognize pretty complex stuff, I think is easier than we might imagine, and definitely something on the horizon, because we have the ability now to get that data, and then people can process it. And this is all open source. So people who are inclined to do this can do this and contribute to the project, and we can all benefit from it.
That's amazing. Well, I know, Sean, you've got a barbecue that you're hosting at your place there in the Bay Area too. So I want to give you an out if you want. I can keep answering some questions. I got a few other things. I have a video even of Benjamin from Benjamin Cooper Bear, who is developing the firmware or the software to run the creator clubs. And this is just a little demo video of some of the things that he's been experimenting with using the creator core to control stage lights, for example. And he's actually got a club and he's like moving the club around and move the lights around.
Oh,
I can play that
so
video
cool
for folks. That's just stunning. They saw the routine that I worked with them on the other night in the show. They saw the routine that Jonglissimo, the man from Jonglissimo, has been doing. So we've got lots of stuff to chat about. If you want to take an out, or if you got any final thoughts.
No, that was great. Thanks everyone. Here's another prisoner shot.
Yeah.
Way to go eat.
And we had a super successful giveaway. Thank you so much for the donation. Skylar Himes ended up walking away with the prize.
Congratulations, Skylar.
Yeah.
So many good entries.
Yeah, love the entries, guys. That was
Great, you got to watch them.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's a watch party available on Facebook, and I put it on the website and everything too, folks. You can watch all of them in like 20 minutes, and it's really entertaining because there's a lot of different styles of videos, and everybody got really creative.
I love how creative they are, and the fact that they're so short too enables you to watch 100 of them.
Right. And I want to remind people about the Flow Fest or the Club Fest discount for Vision Clubs. You still have clubs in stock, or they've all sold out already?
Clubs in stock, but the discount code ended when Club Fest started. I could extend it if people are still interested. I don't know, for.
Are we negotiating a discount here? Is that what's happening?
I did not realize that.
I'll only put up as many as we can deliver, and that's whatever is in fulfillment.
But you could get a discount if you submit a video.
Oh, for everybody who didn't win, you get a discount.
Yeah, or another 30-second video round of videos.
No.
It's got to be new content.
Ouch.
All right. I think we're going to head off.
Somebody was asking about a day club. There's a rumors of a Flowtoys day club.
So by special request, we can actually make basically an empty vision club, which is like a loop club, but lighter. So if you want a super lightweight club, that is something that we can make, because the vision club without the electronics is lighter than a Henry's club. And it also has the unique flex of the polycarbonate shaft, which is slightly stiffer than like one of the play clubs with a plastic shaft, but it's not quite as hard and rigid as the wood club. So a lot of people like that. And then we're also going to start offering Henry's loop clubs in a variety of colors. We have all the parts. We just have yet to actually put them together, pick color options, and put them on the website.
Nice. Yeah. Actually, funny, we had a little influencers panel the other day with Aaron Stevens and Josh Horton and Taylor Glenn. And one of the questions Kevin asked them what their favorite club was. Turns out everybody in that group said the loop club. And so you picked the right body to use.
Dude, the loop club, I mean, it's the perfect, it is the evolution of everything club for that. Okay, so one quick club spiel I want to give. When I started, I'm not a juggler. I can juggle clubs a bit. I really love handling and playing and flipping clubs around, but I'm too busy working on things to practice. So but when I started getting into clubs, I pretty quickly became obsessed with them, because they're like, unlike any other flow prop, there's basically only one club. The shape and weight balance and length and overall weight of juggling clubs are almost all identical compared to any other flow prop. I mean, you look at contact stabs, they're all over the board. You look at poi, they're all over the board. Even contact poi are all over the board compared to clubs. And it came down to like dolphin versus pirouette body shape, long handle versus short handle, as we call it, to be more generic. But it just blew my mind that every club was exactly the same length. Like, people's arms aren't the same length. Why is every club the same length? But I think it's great and it's awesome. And you look back at the history of clubs, and it's got a lot of history, a lot of experimentation, a lot of development and evolution. It is so refined. It's been just dialed down to the one thing. And forgive me if you're a dolphin fan, but my research into dolphins led to the kind of two conclusions. One is the only reason that they're as popular as they are is because they were the cheaper option from Henry's for a long time, and I think maybe still are. And that was partly because they had a solid handle, not a wrap handle, and they hadn't made a pirouette yet with a solid handle, which they called a loop. And the other is that they seem to spin a little faster when you throw them, and people think that that's because of the balance point or the weight, but the balance point and the weight are actually identical to a pirouette. If you measure the length of where the balance point is relative to the knob or the cap, it's the same. So why do they spin faster? Well, it turns out they spin faster because you tend to throw them from closer to the middle when you grab them. Why would you do that? The handle's shorter. The ring is closer to the knob. So why would, and there's something about the psychology of grabbing the dolphin shape where you tend to grab it closer to the middle and throw from closer to the middle, even though you would think that would happen on a pirouette instead. And this is not 100% conclusive, but based on talking to a lot of people at great depth about this, geeking out, narrowly avoiding heated arguments, that's all I can think of, and maybe this is a topic for a different forum. But so ultimately, it came down to like pirouette shape and going with that, and the loop club being the non-wrap handle version of a pirouette. And we also offer Delphin. Almost nobody requested or buys it. It's way less. Yeah, I don't want to. I think it's not even 1% of our vision prop sales of Delphin. And then there's the loop, or the grip versus smooth is like kind of a toss up. There's pros and cons to both, and that's one where yeah, I think there's room for both. But unlike other flow arts props, you don't have like a golf club bag full of your whole variety of different juggling clubs that you would actually want for different types of juggling or whatever it is. There's just one. I think that's amazing. It also enables you to use anybody's clubs, and they feel almost exactly like yours, right? So you can juggle with other people very easily. When you pick up clubs, if you don't have your props with you, you can pick up someone else's props and use them, and they feel like, almost exactly what you've got 10,000 hours of practice on. That is not the case with poi or stabs or other things that we've been making. So yeah, I love them.
Well, to lay to rest whether or not this is the right place for the conversation, I think it is, because it's Club Fest, and here we are talking about the minute differences between clubs. So got the right audience.
Does anybody want to speak in support of the Dolphin body shape as being somehow better than a pirouette, as opposed to just something you have 10,000 hours on and don't want to change because you're used to it, which is totally valid?
Any takers? Yeah. Well, not to mention that you had me and Brian and Chachi and like all these people around you being like, no, don't do Delphins, do vision or do pirouettes.
Well, thankfully, I didn't have to choose. They're practically modular. You can buy Delphin body parts for your pirouette style vision club and swap them out, and they're only $5 a piece. So if you did want to change or try the other body styles, it's cheap and easy. One screw.
I think somebody was piping up. James Robertson says he uses Delphins because a bunch of people that he passes with uses Delphins. Is that you, James, popping up in the chat?
That's definitely the consistent conclusion tends to be, well, if you've been using Delphins your whole life and it's what you've got super dialed in for your feels, then Delphin it is, and we've got that. And if, all your friends are using Delphins and that's what you guys are used to, that's what you pass, that's great. There are some technical advantages to the pirouette body style. The longer handle obviously gives you a little bit more handle to work with. They also stack a little bit tighter in your hand. And in theory, slice through the air a little better. They're more aerodynamic. That's probably negligible. I forget whether there's any other technical advantage to a pirouette over a Delphin. I find them more elegant aesthetically. If I were to just draw a club or look at two pictures of club silhouettes, I find the pirouette style, even before I had any bias, to be more beautiful. But
so there's a few people dying to know. I know I told you could go already, but the questions keep rolling in. People want to know if there's any timeline for the Creators Club and when they'll be available, and if you have any idea around the price point. I know it might be a little ways out still.
Currently looking at $250 a club, and that's kind of keeping the price kind of on the low side to get things rolling. Hoping not to ever have to raise it from that, but it's possible. Considering the development that went into them, the cost of them. I mean, the R&D on them has been huge, and considering the volume of sales is not expected to be huge, so to recoup that R&D costs, we have to have the price be quite a bit higher than the pirouette or than the vision clubs. And release, I'm currently sitting on about 70 that are unspoken for, but we have to develop the sport documentation before we can give them to anybody, and so that's going to take a few months. But we do have a set it's like the 5th maybe revision. They're durable, they're dialed. Junglissimo just bought 30 of them, and that's so far the only people. And then Ben has a set, and Jer has a set, and Chachi actually has. Well, they're kind of like the Flowtoys set, the in-house set. which Chachi has full access to. And so we're going to start developing that and really, figuring it out so that we can make it easy for other people to use.
Awesome. Well, we've got just a couple more minutes. Thank you so much, Sean. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. And thanks for answering all these questions.
My pleasure. This is a blast. I could do this for hours, actually. Sorry, I got to go.
I believe it. Have a great barbecue. I'm going to throw out a few links for people, but Sean, I'll do that after you go. So thank you so much. Let's give some love for Sean in the chat, or in the chat and video and all that good stuff. Sean and Prisma both. You guys are awesome. Flowtoys is amazing.
Thank you.
Later. All right. So I just want to point out a few things, guys. Rob, I did see your question. There is no mobile app yet, but they are in the process of working on that, and it'll be using a bridge so that it's like a separate device that you use to communicate with your phone, and it could communicate with the club. So that is going to be a thing. Chitane and Bento are the software that are going to be used by the Creators Core, and that is available already to start exploring. So if you are into programming and this is something that's interesting to you, you don't have to wait to actually have Creator Clubs in your hand to start messing around with that. I'll make sure that those links are available to you, and that's through Ben Kuperberg, who I'll also have a link for. He's got some pretty interesting YouTube videos. And I do have a few other resources like that people may not have known about if they hadn't been digging through the Flowtoys channels. There's a Flowtoys group that not the Flowtoys page itself, but there's a Flowtoys group that I can link people to as well. If you have vision clubs, you should be on the beta testing group, because you can get a lot of questions answered there very quickly. It's a support page basically for anything vision, and I'm sure the creator is going to carry it over there as well. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, never mind. It's disabled, and we've only got 2 minutes left anyway. I'm going to put some stuff on the website, folks, with that is Vision Club related, that has a diagram of all the modes and everything available for you, and so for quick reference. So great. It's been fun. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin so that he can turn it over to the next workshop team, which, boy, we've got some stellar ones ending it here, folks. Take care. It's been fun.
All right, everybody. So much love for Flowtoys and the incredible work they're doing. It's a never-ending unfolding of possibilities. And as a lifetime fan of Glow Club juggling, I just love the Vision Club so much. I couldn't encourage you more. They are my all-time favorite Glow Club, and I've owned quite a few and played with many more others. All right, we're going to throw up just a few links as we prepare for the last workshop series, 2 workshops back to back by Santi Malabari and Jorge Vilchis. And before I introduce them, I'm just going to first throw the tip jar. If you have enjoyed Club Fest, even if you've already donated, if you've been here for 48 hours with us and like us, consider donating again. It would mean a lot, and we are really close to our goal. We are, again, using the money coming in today to fund our workshop instructors, our organizers, event expenses, and anything extra will be thrown into the performers jar. So please donate if you can. Unfortunately, there isn't a Venmo set up for this event, Melanie. In an extreme example, I could do my personal Venmo, but I'm really trying to keep all the finances in a clear spot for the event, for tracking. So there is no Venmo, but thank you for asking. You could also support us by going to one of these amazing websites right here. You have our Club Motion Facebook page, the Club Motion YouTube channel, and the Club Motion website, which we have been working extremely hard on creating as a true resource for club jugglers and manipulators. So get to know it, visit those links, donate if you can. All right, to start us off in our last workshop series with one of my all-time favorite club manipulation categories, I'm going to now hand it over to Santi Malabari.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We're here. Hey, we're here in Playa del Carmen with Jorge Vilchis. We will have back-to-back workshops, and I'll start soon with mine because